1. In 1999, or 2000, when I was 14, I was with my friend Carl skateboarding in Northport Village, New York. After a couple of hours, we decided to go to a deli and grab something to drink. We took our sodas outside and sat down on a bench in front of the deli, where a middle-aged man was also sitting. Carl and I were just making small talk, and I specifically remember I was drinking a grape soda. I was looking at the table and saw a warning that said something along the lines of, "Warning, contents under pressure, cap may blow off." I had never seen that warning before, and I found it amusing. I then mentioned it to Carl, but he also found it peculiar. Then, in an amused tone, the middle-aged man said something like, "Does it really say that?" So I showed it to him, and we all thought it was interesting. Whatever. The man then asked us if he could ask us something. We said sure, even though this was a random encounter with a guy who looked like he was in his late 40s or early 50s. He did not give off any creepy vibes. He asked us what religion we were, and where we went to church, if we went. It's not really important to the story, but Carl and I are both Catholic, and attended Mass pretty regularly at St. Patrick's Church in Huntington, New York. Even though this was a much more intense question, he asked it in the same light-hearted tone he had kept with us during the conversation. "When you die and Jesus asks you, 'Why should I let you into my kingdom?' What are you going to say?" We both basically gave the same answer, saying that we try to be good people and go to church. For the record, my mother was a pretty strict Catholic at the time. Carl's family was not as religious, but he was still a believer. The man then told us that those were both pretty good answers, but what we have to say is, "Because Jesus died for my sins." We both acknowledged him and said okay. Carl and I exchanged a few more pleasantries with him and started to walk down the street. I swear to you, we could not have taken more than 5 or 10 steps when Carl said, "Watch that dude be gone." So we both looked behind us, and sure enough, he was nowhere to be seen. Carl and I went looking for the man for probably the next 10 or 20 minutes. We could not find him anywhere, and I can promise you we were thorough. I'm sure it's possible that he just slipped away and got in his car or something in those few seconds we had our backs to him. But to this day I believe he was some sort of messenger. 2. My mom and my aunt live out in the suburbs, with not much around them except for a horse farm and some woods. My mother lives on the first floor, while my aunt lives on the second floor. They have lived in that house for 3 years. One day my grandmother broke down crying because she claimed someone was breaking into the house, stealing her things, misplacing items and leaving lights on. My aunt is a nurse, and dementia runs in our family, so she just assumed it was that. Regardless, my aunt installed cameras in the house to make my grandmother feel comfortable, and obviously, no one was breaking into the house. However, this year the indoor cameras caught the living room light turning on all by itself in the middle of the night. It even picked up the movement and pointed itself towards the direction of the lamp. I chalked it up to faulty electricity. My aunt called an electrician. He checked everything out and said everything was fine. They ended up installing solar panels shortly after. Another time, my mom was shutting off lights and locking her doors for the night. When she woke up in the morning, the bathroom faucet was running full speed. I thought it was weird, but we just left it at that. Then, maybe 5 or 6 months ago, the knocking started. My aunt and mom were very frightened because they're a house full of women with a young child and an older woman, and it was only happening at night. They set up Ring doorbell cameras and said if they heard it again, they would call the cops for obvious reasons. Not too long after, they heard knocking on my mom's door, but saw no one on the camera. At this point, I'm thinking it's the wind shaking the door, and is rattling the door, creating a knocking sound. This October, I went over to announce my pregnancy to the family. We were waiting on my cousin to show up. It was about 10 p.m., and we all heard a pounding on my mom's front windows. We were waiting towards the back of the house. I'm excited, so I run to answer the door, but his car is not there, and he is not there. Looking back, my mom's 2 dogs did not bark nor follow me to the door as they usually do. I love those dogs, but you could leave the room and they will start barking. So for them not to bark or even follow me to the door was weird. My mom checks the cameras and there's no one there. Not even a notification. My aunt, who lives on the 2nd floor, has started hearing banging on her bedroom window and her front door. My mom continues to hear banging on her window and front door. It's always 3 knocks, some soft, some hard, and at different times throughout the day. Their cameras have yet to catch anything, but mainly family members who've come to visit have witnessed the same knocking. Some side notes. I recently found out the house used to be an ambulance service. Before any of this creepiness started happening, when I would come to visit, I would have strange, lucid dreams. My mom and I have heard a pulsing noise in the middle of the night on several different nights. Recently, my aunt's co-worker said, whatever it is, it's not good, and out to get her 3-year-old daughter. She said it was because they've been in the house for 3 years. She's 3 years old. The knocks always happen in 3s. Anyway, any thoughts as to what would cause this knocking? Skeptics are very welcome. 3. A few months ago, I went on a trip with 2 friends. Both of them are very sensitive to the supernatural. One can only sense or perceive it, while the other has told me about seeing full apparitions with all their details. We arrived at a hotel in the late afternoon, a hotel that was just over 30 years old. A beautiful hotel with hundreds of guests that day. We took the elevator and realized that our room was quite far away. We had to walk down the hallway and make 2 left turns. As we began to walk down the hallway, still decorated with a somewhat old carpet, one of my friends said, "The good thing is that this hotel isn't haunted." All 3 of us laughed and continued to our room. The next morning, when we headed to breakfast, we ran into the housekeeper in the hallway. We greeted her with a good morning, and one of my friends asked her, "There are no ghosts here, right?" The housekeeper just stared at us and, with nervous laughter, insisted, "Oh, there are." She told us that on the upper floor there's a ghost of a night guard who died of a heart attack. Several people have seen him making his rounds on that floor, of course only at night. She then told us about the maid who died in room 45, the one that's practically in front of the 2 elevators. People say that she frequently knocks on the door of that room at different times, like when they knock to see if guests want their room cleaned. Well, we said thank you very much, and we hurried off to have breakfast. We went up to the elevator and one of my friends said, "I said there were no ghosts, but it was only to deny that I felt something." The next evening we returned from our city activities a bit tired, but I still wanted to spend some time in the hotel lobby. We walked down the long hallway to the elevators, and when we arrived, I pressed the down button. Shortly after, the bell rang to signal that the elevator had arrived, and the left-hand elevator door opened. The elevator was empty, and the light was off. I had never felt anything like this, and it scared me. So I hesitated to get in. The friend who was with me said, "Oh, that's really strange." The elevator closed its door, and we heard it go up a floor and then down again. I was waiting for the other elevator to arrive, but it didn't. Instead, the left elevator returned and opened its door again, but this time the light was on. I truly felt goosebumps, something that had never happened to me in such a situation. And more so, I don't even believe in ghosts. I said, "How scary. Could it be that the maid from the room in front, room 45, is playing a prank on us?" I told my friend. We waited for that elevator to leave and for the right-hand elevator to arrive so we could go down without fear. I really felt that something strange had happened. How could the light in the elevator go off? There was a small switch located next to the floor buttons. And then, when it went up and down, who turned on the light if it was empty? The ghost night guard? We returned to our room after spending some time in the lobby and shaking off the scare. and we told our other friend, the one who sees ghosts, what happened to us. She said, "Oh yes, it was definitely the ghost of the maid." She never used the elevators or went near that area again. In the last few days we were there, she used the stairs on the side of our room, even though it was several floors up. Four. I've had a few paranormal experiences throughout my life, but this one popped up in my brain the other day, and I've been thinking about it a lot and can't really explain what happened, so I thought I'd share. About 2 years ago, in the dead of winter, my power went out. This was a big problem for me because I have a pet leopard gecko who requires heating elements to survive. It started getting very cold in my apartment very quickly, to the point I became worried about my pet's safety, and did the only thing I could think of to do, which was to take my gecko to my car and crank the heater up. Normally, we get a few power outages every winter in my area, and they last maybe an hour or two. This time was different, because the power did not come back on for 6 hours. After about an hour of sitting in my driveway, I got extremely bored and started driving around my neighborhood, which had some more rural areas that butted up against national forest. One of these areas is an absolutely beautiful overlook, where you can see miles of the forest and also a few streetlights, so I'm able to see if the power came back on. So I drove there, and parked to enjoy the view. It had the heat running for a while, and the car had gotten a bit hot, so I rolled down the window to let in some cool air, and almost immediately started hearing something kind of far off at first. Kind of a weird, sad-sounding howl mixed with a squawk. I assumed it was an animal, but rolled up the window almost all of the way just in case. Over the next 20 minutes, the sound got progressively closer and closer to the car, until it sounded like it was circling me. I can still hear this sound in my mind clear as day, even though this happened several years ago. And I know what animals we had locally and what they sounded like. This didn't sound like any of them. I got nervous and decided to leave and go get some food and gas in a neighboring town that still had power. About another hour goes by without anything happening. No noise, no nothing, until eventually I see movement among the big rocks in front of me. It's starting to get dark, so I can't really make it out perfectly, but at one point it looked like the head of a disfigured animal peered at me over a rock and then disappeared. I see this several more times, but I stay because if it was an animal, there was something severely wrong with it, be it an injury or a birth defect that would probably affect its quality of life. And I wanted to be able to let animal control know so they could find it help or put it out of its misery, if necessary, since it was clearly staying in the exact area. After a while, it starts making noise again, the same one as before, but now it's also added this horrible gurgling and sounds almost human. At this point, it's gotten completely dark, and I can't see much of anything, but I can still hear it circling the car. Eventually, I hear what sounds like something messing around near the back tire, and I panic and peel out of the parking spot. I look behind me and see what is now very clearly a person in the taillights. They attempted to chase the car for a few feet, but quickly gave up. Is it possible that this was just a person under the influence or suffering from a mental health issue? Yeah, it definitely is. But that seems pretty unlikely, since it was probably below 30 degrees outside and far enough out of everyone's way I doubt anyone would be hanging out there, let alone hanging out there for hours and wearing what appeared to be an animal skin on their head. If it wasn't a person, based on the location and how the thing looked, probably a skinwalker. This experience still terrifies me to this day. 5. The Onryo is Japanese for vengeful spirit. It is a type of ghost believed to be capable of causing harm in the world of the living. It is usually a female ghost, typically depicted with long black hair covering her face, clothed in a white dress. This took place last month. I had planned the trip with my friends to 2 cities within the same country that were neighboring each other, City A and City B. The backstory is that I have no prior history of experiencing supernatural entities, be it imagined or real, in my 21 years of life in my home country. In the 24 hours before my flight to City B, I received the word death twice over text by the same person. I considered this an omen. Thankfully, I touched down safely in City B. My friends and I then took a bus from City B to City A. My friends and I failed to observe many Chinese superstitions when selecting and entering the hotel room in City A. We chose the very corner room, failed to mess up the arrangement of our shoes, didn't knock on the wardrobe door before opening, left room chairs empty before going to sleep, etc. It didn't help that the room opposite our corner room was a numberless room, despite it being on a high floor with a beautiful view of City A. It just seemed unlikely for the hotel to waste a room overlooking the beautiful view as a staff room, and more like something might have happened in that room in the past, which is why the hotel staff removed the number. I noticed a lamp flickering at 3:08 a.m. during the last night in City A, and the very next morning when I played blackjack, a gambling game based on the probabilities and luck, I lost all my money, even though I was previously having a huge winning streak for over 200+ games. My interpretation of this was that something had signaled its presence in the room, and later turned my good or neutral luck into bad luck, resulting in my financial loss. When we returned to City B, though we had a slight improvement, we again failed to observe several Chinese superstitions. On the second night, I heard what sounded like footsteps silently past 3 a.m., coming from outside our room. The following night, I was playing blackjack again on my phone when I suddenly experienced a noticeable shift in my luck from good to neutral to bad. I heard what sounded like soft thunder, followed by a shadowy figure appearing in my peripheral vision at the corner of the room, at our shoe area just beside the wardrobe. We had failed to knock the wardrobe door once again in this hotel before opening. However, we had successfully messed up the arrangement of our shoes this time around. My interpretation was that the messed up shoes confused whatever thing I saw there, so it was just stuck at the shoe area without advancing closer towards me. The entity appeared another 8 or 9 times in my peripheral vision, however disappearing with each time I turned my head to look at it. At the same time, I started experiencing statistically improbable losing streaks before I eventually lost all my money once again. I proceeded to shower, which was a very bad idea in hindsight, considering what I had just witnessed. While showering, I felt as though something was watching me. There was also a sensation in my right leg, twice as though something was trying to grab it. The shower cubicle also started filling up with an unusual amount of water, such that when I opened the shower cubicle door, the toilet flooded immediately, which is something my friend confirmed when she entered the toilet the next morning. My interpretation of this is that something had hoped that I would fall down while showering. The unsettling part is that the shower cubicle was poorly designed, such that it was partially soundproof. So, if something had happened to me, my friends who were already sleeping when I was showering would probably only have discovered me the next morning. After showering, I woke my friends up and we requested a change in room. The next day, I tried to build good karma and actively donated to people requesting for donations every time I had the chance. However, for the whole day I could feel around 8 to 10 times a similar sensation of my right leg being grabbed. That night, while I was waiting for my turn to shower, I took a nap. Then I heard the sound of soft thunder again. Paralyzed with fear at the thought that it had found me once again, my whole body suddenly could not move. Despite hearing my friends calling me, I could not respond. Just when hotel staff, paramedics, and police crowded into the room, I slowly became responsive and regained control over my body. I decided to go to the hospital just to be safe. In the hospital, I heard thunder noises again. The next day, my friends had to return back to our home country. Around 2 hours after my friends left, I heard what sounded like my friends talking just outside my ward. However, I could not quite make out what they were saying. I texted my friend to ask if they were still in the hospital. They said they were already at the airport. I was transferred to a second hospital shortly after. I could sense that the second hospital was a very dirty place, right when I saw the entrance of the building. As it was a very old hospital, over 40 years old, I saw many omens during the first few days, such as flipping to a random page in a book, and the first word I see being the Chinese word for death, as well as repeatedly seeing the number combination 444, which is a very unlucky number combination in Chinese culture. Every night, I had made it a point to arrange my slippers in opposite directions before going to sleep, just to be safe rather than sorry. One of the mornings when I awoke, one slipper was missing, and to this day I still don't know where it went. On the fourth night, at the second hospital, I believe, I met and saw in front of my very eyes the entity who I believed had been following me. A female Onryo, probably around my age. She tried communicating to me the next night when she appeared to me again, but ultimately we failed to have any meaningful conversation. Then I didn't see her for the remaining few days at the second hospital, probably because I was surrounded by a lot of positivity during the remainder of my stay. However, on the day I was discharged, about an hour before boarding the plane, I met her again at the airport. It seemed like she was saying goodbye to me. The doctors, being doctors, claimed I was imagining things, but you can't argue that the omens, the lamp flickering, me losing all my money in my gambling account twice, and me losing one side of my pair of slippers, especially during or near the times of the supposed supernatural encounters, were all uncanny incidents. So what do you think? Was this all a figment of my imagination, or did I encounter something supernatural? I will leave it up to you to decide. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 362. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do poke the like button, and share the video with friends and family. If you'd like early access to the video, support me on my Patreon, which is linked in the description. You'll also find a link to the Hellfreezer merchandise store. If you especially enjoyed today's video, why not leave a tip? You can do so by clicking on the little heart with the $sign in the middle underneath the video. And you don't have to do that, but I appreciate it, and thank you very much. Alright, no other business today, I don't think. So let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... And this one comes from Newcomb, which was left on the Hellfreezer Discord. The link to that is in the description. Did you ride the school bus as a kid, and did you like it or not? I didn't ride the school bus as a kid. I always walked to and from school, unless my father would give me a ride. Generally, I'd walk there, and if we had a car at the time, we didn't always, he'd pick me up afterwards, which was very much appreciated at the end of the school day. Though I do remember thinking, the folks that had to kind of wait around for the school bus, I remember I felt kind of lucky knowing that I could literally just leave and go home if I wasn't getting picked up. It wasn't far, I could just walk. So I have no school bus memories, which is probably a good thing because I don't really like public transport. Never been a big fan of it. I mean, I would certainly use it if I had to, but people do have a way of peopling, and they especially people in enclosed spaces. Anyway, that's my answer. Why don't you let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's have today's answer of the day. And this is, how do you react to those don't click on this messages that you get on YouTube a lot? You know, the kind of clickbaity things. And the answer comes from Skrinwiper. I hope I got that close to right. And the answer is, I ignore the don't click this as a factor, and whether I click depends on the presence or lack of any other redeeming or interesting aspects. Usually there are none, unless it's someone taking the piss out of those sorts of videos. And with that, I'm gonna head off for now. So until next time, Thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.